Maybe we can grab the link once it's live from the actual stream.
Okay.
From the actual stream.
Okay.
From the actual.
All right. Can somebody go to this site and see if make sure we're live?
That's where I am right now. It hasn't shown up yet.
Right.
I can see it just live in my subscriptions feed.
Awesome. And can you double check to make sure that we can hear everyone?
Oh yeah, I see it now too.
Yeah, I could hear it. When I flipped over there, I could hear us talking.
Awesome. Okay, well then I guess we're ready to go. All right, hello Internet. Welcome to PolyCast episode 445. I am one of your regular hosts, Mega Bears fan, joined as always by Makalua.
Oh, I always need more coffee for this thing.
Don't we all? And the Mian team.
Everything is always changing. Maybe it won't suck.
Oh, maybe what won't suck? That doesn't sound like a likely outcome.
Well, perhaps, but let's try to be positive. If only at first.
Well, okay, we'll try.
Anything you want to cover before we go into some of the changes?
No, not specifically.
All right, then. We have patch 1.2. Another small release afterwards, but I guess we'll start with the big one that came out on the 22nd of April. And basic, tiny little updates then. So first of all, if you're on Switch, get wrecked. You have to wait. Doesn't seem like it's ready yet. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully that will be available soon. For the others, we have patch 1.2. It's a big update, so I'll try to hit the highlights, and then maybe we can go over anything else you want to cover.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to actually play it yet. I meant to do it this week, but I just got busy with so many other things and was like literally working at midnight on like my actual job. So
yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I've got the crawl tournament now, so. But okay, randomized resource generation, and they've added new resources, quite a few there. They changed fish to a bonus resource as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. They've done rebalancing for food and growth, with the idea being that food stays viable all game long instead of having bottlenecks and breakpoints where it's not from a design perspective. And they're hoping that will make some of the civ leaders who are focused on more. And allegedly, the AI has been improved to take advantage of this. And perhaps we'll see that. Maybe. Big feature for those of us who still play Turncast, although that's not too frequent for me lately. But multiplayer teams. This is greatly appreciated. And I like this iteration more than Civ 6's. But maybe not quite as much as the permanent alliance feature in plus teams in Civ 4. But this is a close second. So teams share visibility with each other along with relationships, war status, and alliance. When one player wins victory, the whole team wins that victory. So that's nice. You can also do diplomatic actions with each other other than espionage, although the trolling would be funny. It makes sense that you cannot spy on your own team.
Or just steal each other's technologies.
Yeah, which importantly is actually relevant because unlike previous iterations of this mechanic, you don't automatically share tech and civic progress. So, yeah, you're still on your own for teching and that kind of thing.
Yeah, being able
which
to
means
just
you can actually like play your own game while you're on a team.
Yeah, being able to just like do espionage actions to like steal each other's, civics and technologies without any fear of the other person becoming aggressive towards you because mechanically they're not even permitted to, would maybe be a little teensy-weensy bit broken.
Well, and they also aren't harmed by it in any capacity.
Well, there was a reason we got rid of tech trading. It was a little too powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's straight up a balance thing. And it was questionable with your permanent alliance partners to like to mess with them that way. But in terms of strength, yeah, it would just be de facto tech trading or tech trading at a discount or whatever. Yeah, so I understand why that wouldn't be allowed. Because like, why have it where you can't share tech or civic progress and then you just do with the spies? It'd be silly. So okay, 10 new resources: mangoes, clay, flax, rubies, rice, limestone, tin, llamas, hardwood, and wild game. Each
Yeah,
has new
I did the same
effects.
thing at Llamas.
The super important critical, resource of llamas. Can't build a civilization without them.
Go to war
Well,
over
some
the
of these
llama
are
trade.
also interesting additions to resources, but we've seen some of them before too. Only rice, limestone, tin, llamas, and hardwood appear in the modern age, so some of this you won't. Yeah, they've added narrative events, which get to later. Now resources are randomized on new game starts. Some are guaranteed in certain ages. New placement rules make for more consistent resource distributions in initial ages and more changes between transitions. Some resources in exploration and modern related to economy legacy paths, like treasure and factory resources, will now appear only on one hemisphere or the other, so you have to actually expand to get them. Let's see here. Treasure resources now have passive effects. I guess I'll just hit the dev notes on this, which is most of the entry. We want to make these resources worth improving and protecting, even if they didn't grant you treasure fleets on your homelands. Horses, furs, and rubies resources are treasure resources now, and will create treasure fleets. Homelands and distant lands from each civilization's perspective. So your homelands could be distant lands to another civ. Distant lands in the antiquity no longer spawn placeholder treasure resources. Okay. So yeah, some tuning to the treasure resource. A couple balance tweaks. I don't know, go over that kind of stuff in detail, but they have been addressing the yield of the resources. Okay, some gameplay changes. AI players will now build larger navies when on islands maps like Archipelago. There's no longer pick city state bonuses. Yeah, so that are chosen by the player. Yeah, so more AI improvements. Hopefully, you'll see that come to fruition in terms of actual performance. Just an issue for age transition that could prevent legacy cards from unlocking during the transition. It's a speculative fix. So hopefully that goes through. For diplomacy, yeah, they have massively nerfed stealing technologies generally. Like they are more expensive in the first place by 50%, and they increased the penalty from being caught stealing by 50% in addition, and a 30% failure chance when being counter-spied. So
Yeah, there just wasn't a whole lot of penalty. Like really, the biggest penalty was the opportunity cost of spending your influence, because the influence is like one of, if not the most precious yields in the game, because there's so much that you do with it now. But because you don't like actively build like and train spies as like units or things that you can actually like lose, uh yeah, there just wasn't like, I think you always got the technology or civic that you tried to steal every time. Like I could be mistaken on that, but I don't think I ever failed to actually steal the civic or technology. Like I think the only penalty was whether or not you get caught, which is a random chance, and then that would have diplomatic modifiers. So like you never really lose anything other than the influence points that it cost for you to perform the action to begin with, which yes is expensive, but like you're doing that either way, whether you pass or fail. So
yeah, well now it's more expensive after getting caught, and it costs more in the first place. So a bit more counterplay because there's a risk to it.
yeah, I wonder if
I don't know how much 30% failure chance to the enemy is going to feel when you're the one being spied, but you can also not worry about it, I guess.
yeah, I wonder if there could have been a way to maybe make it so that like failing would cost you influence. But of course, the problem with that is that, or cost you more influence. The problem with that, of course, would be that if you don't have any influence to spend when the spy mission fails, then like what would happen then?
Yeah. Plus, like, this might be enough. I guess we'll see. It's a little bit less annoying just as a mechanic than if they're like poisoning your resource gains, so to speak, like you saw in Civ 4, where they could like just trash your happiness and health if you didn't interrupt it. And it wasn't necessarily easy to interrupt. You could make it prohibitively expensive, but man, you could really get screwed by spies. Whereas, like, if they're stealing your text, yeah, they're catching up to you, but they're also spending influence for that, and they're not like actively harming you directly. So like they're just catching up to you. There also has to be something to steal.
Well, there are
So
espionage actions that are actually harmful to the other players. Like I forget what
yeah,
all
what I'm
of
saying for this particular one,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel as bad as some of the others which can be more obnoxious if there's no counterplay.
Yeah.
Granted, you don't want text stealing to be too cheap anyway, because then that's like the only correct way to gain research. But
right.
Why build science when I could build influence and get double dip?
Well,
yeah,
for one thing,
or,
there's only
yeah,
like two
just do
buildings
science
that
and
create...
research. Like you research something that you know the AI tends not to go for, and then you just steal what the AI tends to go for, and then you're objectively in the lead. Even if you're,
I mean, unless of course all the
output
AIs are doing that, and that's just the optimal meta. But yeah, I mean, there's only like two buildings in each age, I think, that generate influence, unless you get some other modifiers applied to them. So it's not like you can only build influence buildings and not build anything else. Like you're still probably building some science buildings.
Yeah,
So,
but
okay, nerve to that. Natural disasters are less common on the lower settings for natural disaster. Cool. By 50% and 25% respectively for light and moderate. Bridges can be purchased in towns. Let's see any other economy stuff.
Being able to build bridges in towns is actually like pretty cool. I'm surprised that wasn't in the game originally, but that's a very nice inclusion or addition.
Yeah, there seems to be a couple things related to that too, because towns with water-based buildings are considered coastal and be connected to settlements whose city centers are on the same continent. So if you can actually like make that, then it'll count as coastal.
I wonder if that's why some of my attempts to create trade routes was maybe failing, if they weren't being considered connected. I don't know. I've had a lot of weird issues with trade routes, like not being willing to work within the range where they're supposed to work, especially if the city is on a navigable river.
Apparently, you can no longer build or buy buildings with increased cost modifiers without sufficient gold. So I guess you could before. It costs extra due to the boosted cost modifier. You just buy it instead. Lel.
Well, if I remember
it's a work in progress on that kind of stuff.
If I remember correctly, like the game seems like it. So I don't know if this is the same issue or a related issue, or if it's a feature. But the game actually does seem to let you go into negative gold when you purchase things. So you can purchase things that cost more than the gold that you currently have on hand. I think as long as it's not more than your current gold plus your gold per turn, I think it will still let you buy it. And then on the next turn, you just have negative gold for like one turn.
I see.
But I don't know if that's a bug or a feature.
It could be either. And maybe that's what they mean by sufficient gold here. Because it doesn't say, like, without going below zero. This is without sufficient gold, which is a more ambiguous term. So you could interpret that easily to fit within that particular mechanic, if that mechanic is intended. And that makes some sense, I guess. I mean, it's a little odd of a way to implement it, but I've seen that before. Like in EU4 on month tick, if you go into negative gold, but you have enough income to put you positive after a month tick, it will not force you to take loans. Otherwise, it will. So at least one other game has a feature similar to that that appears to be intended. Although you never know with Paradox games, but that one's been around for a while. Okay, back to Civ 7 though. So there, yeah, continued improvements to economy design. They're working on it. Is a dev note.
Oh wow!
Quarters no longer retrigger their
quarters.
effects upon being repaired.
Yeah, I was just seeing that one. Like, oh man, I'm surprised that we didn't see some Spiffing Brit episodes about that. I guess there's no way to.
You only make so many videos per time.
I know,
so many.
But I guess there's also no way to like pillage your own districts or cause them to be damaged. So that would have been a very hard thing to milk.
Who knows? I mean, you give players enough time with enough incentive, they can figure it out. But yeah, there's lower hanging fruit right now.
But
so.
hey, maybe in a team game. Like, hey Phil, you want to come over here and pillage my my research quarter every turn, and I'll rebuild it and get the Mayan bonus or whatever it is.
I will be surprised if the game lets you take hostile actions against your own team. That being said, I'm sure there'll be some kind of oversight with team implementations initially
Yeah, it's
that
complicated.
allow for dubious interactions that they'll wind up patching because it's just it's a new feature. That kind of stuff happens.
Or not patching, and it'll become an accidental feature.
Yeah. We've got another entry for food and growth, removing previous hard cap. They were talking about food earlier in the patch notes, though. Growth formula scales quadratically rather than cubically. So each growth event only modestly increases the number of turns until next pop increase. So I guess bigger cities faster. But that was touched on earlier in the patch notes. Independent powers no longer removed after losing all their units. Huh. Okay.
I guess that must be before they become a city-state.
I guess. So it's like the city-state still just going to appear?
I don't know. I haven't specifically seen that happen, so I don't know what was going on there.
You can no longer use great people on ineligible tiles with no effect. That's nice. And they patched up the tech tutorial. Packed units can be upgraded simultaneously using the upgrade all button on the commander.
Hooray, UI improvements.
Yeah. Always nice to see.
It's the Phil stamp
Bit by
of
bit,
approval.
maybe one day they'll be there. If they keep making UI for improvements every patch, maybe we'll actually get good UI at some point. Production and maintenance cost of cavalry units has been increased. Man, every Civ game, cavalry is like too good by everyone's estimation at the start, or maybe not everyone's, but by the dev estimation at the start, they get nerfed in some ways. Production cost increased by 10 production for age, and maintenance cost by 1 gold in all ages for cavalry. Initiative promotion applies consistently on erosion of terrain and continues after age transitions. Naval units less likely to be placed on inland lakes after age transition. Players correctly receive an aerodrome commander after conquering a city with an aerodrome in modern. Fertility rights now applies to settlements. God of healing requires an altar. Okay, so now there's a bunch of, well, not too many. There's 4 Civ specific things.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to go over those specifically.
Yeah, I'm just looking at them quickly. If there's anything that jumps out. Only Prussian names for Prussian settlements. Very important. You can queue research now. We're now into the UI. You can queue research. Yay. Keep improving the UI. Repair all option. Highlight on tiles for great people. In addition to not letting you use them on bogus tiles. Nice. Civilopedia no longer overlaps. The religious beliefs.
Yeah, there's a lot of Civilopedia updates here.
Yeah, lots of.
I wonder if they actually finally added the ability to. One of the biggest annoyances that I have with the Civilopedia right now, or at least as of the game's launch, is it only shows you stuff that's in the current age that you're playing in. So, like, if you're still learning the game and you're like, oh, what can I potentially build in the next age? Like, nope, can't look that up in the Civilopedia. I wonder if they have updated that yet, because that would be a very nice thing to have.
Yeah, it's basically impossible that there won't be some long-range planning stuff would be useful to know.
Yeah,
really
like what buildings can I potentially upgrade this to? Like what adjacencies are they going to have so I can like plan out my district placements, like what wonders are going to be available. Maybe wonders might actually I don't even think wonders will show you the wonders from other ages. But yeah. And you also can't view the Civilopedia from the game's main menu, and that always frustrates me.
Speaking of wonders, you do see if they are already built or unlocked by a player now. now for in text and civics.
Yeah, from the videos
So
that
that
I've
makes it a
seen,
little easier.
it looks like you have to hover over it to see that, which is kind of annoying. It would be nice if they could just like put like a red cross, or a slash over it, like in the tech tree, um, like graphic.
Yeah, like where like an icon for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be way better than having to hover over every single one to check to see if it's been built yet.
That's true. Yeah, I agree. That is the cleaner implementation. Though even a hover menu is greatly appreciated compared to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take what I can get.
Because hover menus aren't always the optimal solution, but they are. You can convey a lot more information optionally with them than you can without them, and they are very frequently useful.
Right.
As long as the information they convey is accurate. Right, Hearts of Iron?
Yeah, but for something that's I mean, you're talking about for complicated things. We've got like a paragraph long description or a bunch of icons. But if it's literally just a boolean, you can do this or you cannot do this. A little.
Yeah, I agree. That can probably be addressed with the icon itself.
Yeah, a green check mark to show that the wonder's still available, or a red cross over it to show that, or X or something to show that it's not available anymore, or even having an intermediate icon that tells you that like it's being built somewhere, that someone has started it. Like I could even see that as being something that would be like nice to have. I mean, some might argue that that's too much information. But the game will, if you start building a wonder and there is another player in the game who is further along on that wonder than you are, it will give you a pop-up saying that someone else is competing for this wonder. Like with several turns in advance, so you can hypothetically try to speed up your production to beat them to it. Although, because you can't reassign like population to work different tiles and stuff like that in this game, there's not a whole lot that you can do to change the productivity output of a particular city. So it's one of those things where, yeah, that's nice to have, but it would have been a lot nicer to have in the previous games.
Yeah, I mean, that's not just the UI change though, that's a design change, because unless you can always tell without scouting when somebody is building a wonder, which you certainly couldn't in previous civs either, then it is giving you information that you would not otherwise have access to.
Right.
Then the information that could change your decisions.
But I think the point that I'm getting at is if it is the case that as soon as you plop the wonder and other civs are already building it, it just gives you a pop-up that says, oh, other civs are building that wonder. Like, you might as well just put an icon for that on the tech tree.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If that information is going to be given, then you should just put that in the tech tree.
Right, yeah. Give it to the player up front.
Now, whether that information should be given versus scouted is another question, because this is the first time Civ has done that, where it just tells you that a wonder is being contested.
I feel like previous games would have little things that would pop up saying, like, rumors are some civilization is building a wonder somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Like like your trader or somebody would tell you. Yeah.
I feel like even Civ 4 did that.
I don't think so. Maybe.
I'm pretty sure.
Now, in the newer ones, you could certainly scout it because it had a visible impact on the map.
Yeah, you could, and so not only that, but in Civ 6 and I think also in Civ 7, like you could even see just from the 3D model how far along they are.
Yeah, because it had stages to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so the real change is like what degree of information you're getting without scouting at all. Were those rumors things really consistent enough that you could use that?
I don't think they were consistent. That was the thing. Like sometimes they would appear, sometimes they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I very distinctly seeing that in previous games. I just don't remember exactly what it said or even which specific old Civ games they were, because they were so inconsistent. Yeah,
and in Civ 6, any rumor type stuff got buried underneath all the things that would pop up on the turn rollover.
Oh, that too, yeah.
Yeah, there was so much on the right banner there. Yeah, I don't know. Like you can get information overload, but the amount of information which can be conveyed before that becomes a problem changes drastically based on how you choose to present it, and like at what timing you present each of the bits of information. Because if every time you hit end turn you just get a flood of things, Like that's different than as you're going through the turn, you can like check stuff if you feel it's relevant to you. And then like the designers put the stuff that's very certainly relevant into the turn rollover banner. Like that's suddenly more manageable. Or like rather than separate deals, you can have like a button for a summary of deal offers, etc. Okay, now I've lost my place.
Yeah, well, I don't think we need to go through every single one of these. There are a lot of
yeah,
them.
I was looking for stuff that jumped out to me.
I see one where apparently you can bypass the tutorial or skip the tutorial by deleting your scout unit at the beginning of the Antiquity Age. Like, I feel like there should be a more elegant way to turn off or skip the tutorial than having to delete a unit that you already invested production into building.
Yeah.
That's a weird one.
Could they really not like figure something else out? Maybe a button like, hey, skip the tutorial?
I mean, you can go into the settings, the game settings, and turn the tutorials on or off globally. But if they're on, then like every time you start up a new game in Antiquity, like it like walks you through the steps of like building your first city and building your first unit and picking your first like technologies and all that stuff. So as far as I know,
like
there's
you should
no
just
way.
Be able to, like click that button to toggle it off.
Yeah, but I for sure would not want to delete that scout unit. I mean, I want to use it.
Yeah, no, that there's value in that.
Especially
sometimes
since
more value than there should be.
Especially since the first scout or warrior that you build in your when you found your capital at the beginning of the game only costs 1 turn. But then after that, you have to pay the actual production. So like it's also like you're giving up a lot of turns to have to rebuild that unit. So like if
I mean it's an unacceptable.
If I'm understanding this correctly and this works the way that it says that it works, like this is not the ideal way to skip a tutorial. Skipping the tutorial should not like deliberately handicap the player.
Yeah, no, I admit that I haven't tried it. So maybe if you just like hit the delete button, it'll like prompt you to end the tutorial ? And you don't lose the scout. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, like that would be if Firaxis, if you're listening, if that might be a better way to do it.
Or I think it would make more sense just to have it as a toggle in the menus. You just toggle it off.
Yeah, or
and not
or
have,
just
like,
have a button on the tutorial dialogues. Yeah, that just says don't show me any more tutorials this game, but still let you leave the tutorials on in case you want them for the next game.
Less frequent town specialization notifications.
Yeah, those are annoying.
Oh, you'll get a warning now if you go to war. Who would go to war with you if you join an alliance?
That is very, very helpful. Because one of the things that was frustrating me is when you're friendly with another civilization, with an AI civ, they will ask you every few turns if you would like to create an alliance. And then if you do it, but they're at war with someone, you get the pop-up that says, do you want to go to war with that other player or end the alliance? And those are like your only 2 options. Like you can't keep the alliance and not go to war. And I think there's a diplomatic penalty if you choose to not go to war. So like it would be so annoying. They'd ask me to do an alliance and I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. And then the next turn, oh, do you want to go to war with your allies, enemy? Like, no, I really don't. I wish I had known that before I clicked yes.
Yeah. So now we can, I guess. Yields greater than 10 rounded in the leader ribbon in top yield bar. It's an interesting choice. What does that mean? Updated phrasing on locked attribute node.
I do not know.
Added estimated turns until next phase of crisis on the social policy screen. Turns remaining until diplomatic action can be performed again. When it comes to these, like, you can only do this action intermittently, I would almost want to have a toggle for alerts for ones I care about.
Like for when it becomes available again?
Yeah. And like, I don't know, some of them don't really make sense to have it be like an automatic toggle. But like some way to conveniently re-up it if it's possible. but it's like definitely alerts. That way you're not just checking turns remaining, like you're checking when you can do it again as well. Like having that consistently available would be so helpful. And now I'm thinking about other games too, but it would still be helpful in Civ games. Civ relationship displayed when viewing the unit's tooltip. Just in case you don't know, you're fighting them. Now you do. No, that's always a good thing. It should be visually obvious who you're friendly, enemy, and neutral with. And then a bunch of added and changed narrative events. And that concludes the general changes for patch 1.2. Oh, audio update. Sorry, what do you think? I think most of the changes that are being made are positive, at least.
And they're also coming pretty quickly too. I mean, it's like every few weeks there's been an update with quite a lot of fixes and improvements. So
Yeah, you can see that they're looking around the community and see what's going on in people's games, and for the people who like stream and things, and they're going, "Oh yeah, maybe we should change that."
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, it's nice to have all the complaints listened to instead of some developers are just like, "No, you just take it like that."
That's
Well,
pretty rare these days, since a lot of games are rarely released in a finished quote unquote state.
Yeah.
yeah, all new releases are essentially paid for betas now.
It's unfortunate that it came to that, but that's how it is. But I do appreciate when it's more like upfront though. Like this, like a game is considered early access, and it's sold that way.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes they're good. I mean, I've been addicted to Manor Lords for quite a while now, and like there are whole features of that game that are just like completely missing. Like you go into a menu and you just hover over everything in that menu and it says this is not implemented yet. So, but yeah, it just flat out tells you like, hey, there's going to be things here, but they're not available right now.
Yeah, it's been that way for me with Star Sector lately. I mean, it has a main quest, but it like cuts off, and there's no like end game thing that's like narratively there. But even so, like the content that's available is excellent, and it is a sandbox game, so you don't have to do any of that stuff either. Kind of like a Mountain Blade or Bannerlord in space, kind of. And yeah, that's considered early access for many years now. The state of the game currently is still great, and they're not
Yeah,
like
no.
deceiving you with that. They'll tell you straight up.
And on strategy type games, I always expect the first few months are going to be kind of chaotic as it gets released into the wild, and then people find all sorts of new ways to break it, and they go, "Oops, got to patch this. Oops, got to patch that."
Yeah, your playtesters aren't going to catch every single balance issue for sure in a complicated strategy game.
Yeah, I just ask that they like thing like runs decently and it's not like giving you complete misinformation with its tooltips and like the controls work properly, etc.
And
Which unfortunately you can't take for granted.
and that you can, I
Because
mean,
you couldn't back
clearly
in the day
see
either.
what the vision for the game is, right? Like you say, okay, I get how this is supposed to work, but I also understand that it needs a little bit more polish to work the way that it's intended to work. It should not be
I'm
a
assuming it
situation.
doesn't pull a Stellaris and completely change
Well,
the
yeah.
core game a great deal.
Oh yeah, I know.
I've yet to play that. I own it. And I might play it one day.
I seriously, I don't like. Part of me is like, why not just release a sequel? Just make it a sequel at that point, Like it's.
Well, I kind of understand why they did it, even though I didn't play it. Like, one of the big changes early on was like how they did interstellar travel.
Yeah.
And there was just one option that was objectively better than the others by so much that it was the only option, really. And they didn't like what it did to the game. So, like, I certainly understand where they're coming from with that. Like, if you leave that in the game, then it just kills your ability to develop it further. And it was like within a year or two of release. So like I
What's
understand why they wouldn't want to like leave it like that and try to make a sequel while the original game just had a broken balance element like that.
what's kind of interesting though is that Star Trek Infinite released like at the end of 2023, and it still has, or it basically goes back to using the original warp drive mechanic that was in the original version of Stellaris, but they made some changes to the way that it works that make it so that it's not nearly as broken as it used to be. Like the biggest one is that the range of warp drive outside of your empire only extends like one and a half, maybe two systems. So you can only reach adjacent systems from using the warp drive. Like you can't just research a bunch of techs to expand your warp range and just warp straight to the enemy players like homeworld and like nuke it out of existence and bypass all the defensive infrastructure that was in between the way you could in Stellaris. And like
that makes sense.
And then there were a few other like little changes that they did. Like there were better notifications for when enemy fleets are moving towards your systems. I really wish that they had like some way to intercept fleets. Like if there was like a patrol option that you could like put one of your big fleets in a system and tell it to patrol, and it would just like passively have like a radius around it in which it would automatically intercept incoming fleets. I think that would have been a really cool thing to add. They didn't do that, but like that would have been another possible way of addressing the problem. And like reading through like the replies from the Paradox people when they were justifying that change to Stellaris, a lot of times I felt like this just seems like I'm sorry, but it kind of feels like a lack of creativity. Like I get that it was probably a very difficult problem to solve, but like this just feels like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Yeah, that might be true. It's hard for me to say because I don't really know the Star Trek game, and I've not played Stellaris, so I don't know like to what extent that would have been viable in Stellaris.
Yeah, well, that was the big complaint, was that like there were a lot of defensive star bases and military infrastructure and stuff that you could build on like planets that was intended to be built on border worlds to fortify your holdings, but like you could just warp drive or wormhole past them. So they were completely useless to most players.
Yeah.
But like I said, Star Trek Infinite found ways to, they don't completely eliminate it, but it mitigates it considerably.
And maybe it's balanced in the context of that. But I don't know Star Trek Infinite at all, so like I don't know, like I don't even know offhand if it's a 4X. It sounds like it is based on what you're telling me.
It's just Star Trek Stellaris. Like it's
okay.
it's in the Stellaris engine. It's just a official Star Trek mod for Stellaris that got a retail release.
I see.
And then was promptly killed by Paradox because Paradox is gonna paradox. Yeah, they killed like all support and ongoing dev and laid off the entire studio like 2 months after the game released.
Yeah.
And a lot of people speculate that they rushed it out to begin with before it was like completely ready because they wanted to recover losses from the failure that was the Lamplighters League.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So
I feel like aside from Tinto, Paradox has been pretty rough lately.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking of games that feel like they should be in early access, Mackie?
Well, judging what people are saying about the VR version for Civ 6, yeah, y'all could have kept this developing a bit longer.
Civ 7.
7. Sorry. Brain 7. Yeah, this from what I can see where they're showing some of the video and stuff, it looks it's interesting the way you're looking at that, the way the map is in this table and the other leaders are across from you and you're clicking on the interface. It does look like it's really awkward for the menus in the interface. And there's reports that one of the reviewers was having about every 9 turns it get locked into a spot because of the way a menu would pop up in the wrong place, that they'd have to save and restart.
And things
Not to
like
mention,
there's like no technology tree, no civics tree, like at all. Like you have to just pick them from like a drop down menu, apparently, like one at a time. Like Phil,
yeah,
you
yeah,
want to see
these.
bad Civ UI? You should see if you can find some playthroughs of Civ 7 VR, and you might suddenly appreciate the bad UI in all the other games.
I'm not looking for worse UI here. I'm looking for better UI.
Yeah, and apparently it's like super memory hungry. Like one of the reviewers had to make sure nothing else is running in the background, and even then, it was still running choppy. You
Yeah.
know, it's
I will
it's.
say, I think the idea of making the game map look like it's on a table so that it actually kind of looks
Hmm.
like a board game is a really cool idea. Like, I wonder if that was somebody like deliberately saying, "Hey, this is people often call the Civilization games a digital board game. Let's make it look like a board game." Or if it was just like an accidental like thing that they did because of graphics and memory limitations. Like maybe they couldn't render the entire map all at once, um, which is understandable. Like even the flat screen version of the game doesn't render the entire map. Uh, but it looks so constrained. Like I've watched videos of it and the trailers, and like it looks like you can barely even see the entire radius around one city. And I don't know if that's at the farthest zoom or not, or if maybe
Well,
all the
that's one of the that's another issue is when they go to zoom out. Sometimes, like all the structures go into these like tiny low polygon things, or blank. Like I think on one of them you can actually see where it kind of blacks out at a certain distance out. The
yeah.
icons are still there, but the map just goes black, and it's
I'm
this. We're
curious to
talking about early access. This is a beta,
yeah, I'm
an alpha.
curious to see like what the zoomed out maps look like because like I said, all the videos that I saw, all the trailers, all the gameplay footage, it looks like it's really far zoomed in, and I'm like, is this as far out
Hmm.
as it goes, or is this just like zoomed in as far as it goes? Like, because you can't
Well,
see much at all.
yeah, on one of the articles it does have where you can see that, and it is fairly zoomed in, and then they demonstrate that when they try to zoom out, that it does that weird thing. But both of the two reviews that we had to hear that were calling out the fact that the graphics is that everything's buggy. Just yeah, why did you guys put this out in this state?
I mean, you got deadlines that you got to meet.
I know, and I don't know if it has had patches yet.
Hopefully it gets some to improve and fix things. If this were, I would be very curious to play Civilization in VR. Like the idea sounds really interesting, especially with that like kind of board game aesthetic. Um, Although apparently you can't just like reach in and pick up units and like move them around the board. I think you have to use the controllers for it. So they kind of missed an opportunity there. Like, I think it'd be kind of neat to have like a thing where like in military movies when they're playing war games and they have those little sticks that they use
Yeah,
to push their like little model battleships across the board. Like it'd be kind of cool if you had something like that to play with. That would be a fun little immersive feature. But um, yeah, I loved the title of I'm not sure how to pronounce the name of this, but organix.org was one of these reviews that I saw where the review title is "No More Turns, Thanks," which is
well,
brutal.
yeah, having read through that and seeing all the bugs they ran into, and having to basically restart the game every 9 turns, and you're going to play a triple digit length game. No, that's yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
and then I don't think I don't have a Meta headset. I only have a PSVR 2, and I don't think this is going to come to PSVR 2 because it looks like it relies on the augmented reality stuff with the camera pass through, and I don't think the PSVR 2 has that functionality. So I for sure will not be playing this game because I don't own one of those headsets.
Yeah, I haven't gotten VR yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
if it were to come out on PSVR 2, I would consider possibly picking it up on like a steep sale just to see what it's like. But for sure, this is not the way that I would want to play Civilization.
the concept is very cool, and the screenshots I see is like if all of this worked better, it would be great. but it's just everything else is falling short. The actual game running being so choppy. Yeah,
Yeah, if it
I'm just
doesn't, going back to what we were saying earlier, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
it. Yeah, it does not matter how cool it looks, how cool the concept is. If it's this much of a pain in the ass, no one's going to want to play it, which is kind of where both reviews got to. They're like, yeah, we'll pass.
Yep. I think it'll be interesting to see in the future with like AI, speech recognition, and like chatbot kind of technologies. I could imagine a future version of this where like you can literally just like talk to the other leaders, and they would like respond to you in like reasonable ways. Like it'd be kind of fun to just be like sitting around the table, just like having a chat with like Gandhi and Julius Caesar in a Civ game.
Yeah, if they can get that in character well enough.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would almost be worth the price of admission, even if the game doesn't play very well. Okay, anyone else have anything they want to say about the VR version?
I will get VR at some point, maybe. But now is not that point yet.
Sounds like everybody's saying pass this up until they do some patching or stuff with it, or maybe just don't.
But I mean I mean that generally too, not just with Civ
Uh-huh.
VR.
Yeah, I got a PSVR 2, and I am considering buying the PC adapter so that I could use it to play PC games on Steam. But I just haven't pulled the trigger on that. Also, I think I read recently that the PC adapter requires a particular kind of display port that is not the regular HDMI, and I don't think my gaming computer has that port, so I don't even know if it would be compatible. But I am thinking of just buying it so that I have it, like in case I ever want to use it in the future, even if I can't use it with my current computer, because I'm afraid that it's just going to go out of stock and like Sony's never going to restock it, and it'll be like one of those things that's like impossible to get a hold of, and it'll be like $400 on eBay or whatever for something that retailed at like $60. But in any case, I wouldn't be able to play Civ 7 VR because I think that's only on the Meta headsets. All right, so talking about actual Civilization 7 gameplay now. So let's get some actual strategy. We had a video. Who was the author of this video? I forget. Looks like the author was One More Turn, called The Most Disgusting Yields You've Ever Seen in Civ 7, a basic guide. And basically, they are talking about a little known and poorly documented, if it's documented at all, feature of the palace, which is that the palace gets a bonus, I think, science and cultural adjacency for every adjacent quarters. And a quarters in Civilization 7 is a district that has 2 buildings in it. Does not matter what those 2 buildings are. If you've got 2 buildings in a district, it is a quarter. And if you build those adjacent to your palace gets a buff to both science and culture. Which a lot of people apparently did not know about. I did not actually know that this was a thing. So I learned something from this video. And yeah, you can stack this to get some pretty crazy high yields. Because not only does the palace get adjacency bonuses, but the districts themselves get adjacency bonuses from the other districts and from wonders and stuff like that. So this video basically goes over tips and strategies for maximizing these adjacency bonuses. And so of course the biggest tip that they have is to build your cities very compact, right? Put your quarters adjacent to your palace, right? Build them in concentric circles, or not even in concentric circles, but just in the ring surrounding your palace. Like, don't try to snake your districts out, to like reach, further out tiles, because you're going to be losing out on these free yields on the palace. So unless you have a really, really, really good reason for doing that, this person suggests that it is best to, put all of your quarters districts adjacent to your palace whenever possible.
does make sense because that's going to get you the early stuff.
Yeah, right. And again, that's stuff that comes online early, and as we've talked about many, many, many times in the past, stuff you get early is more powerful than stuff you get late. So did either of you get to check out this video? Do either of you have anything to say about it?
Nope, for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what it says. It's showing you different examples with different leaders, so you can see a little bit of how it's going to work. It's going to be different each time you do it, depending on what civ you are and what leader. But that core concept is still there. It's just like cram all the districts right next to each other as much as you can. Especially in your capital, and probably you want, because you do the capital swapping thing in ages, so you probably want a second city that's like that, or maybe even a third, so you can rotate through.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're always going to have a city that's having those super strong cities like that, and then being able to have all the other towns and stuff feed into you could like accelerate it even further.
And that's a good point too, because right, even though your palace is only in the capital and it's not in your other cities, and that's the building that gets these free adjacencies, each age you can have the option to change which city is your capital. So so yeah, if you're thinking ahead and that's something you're planning on doing, then building your quarters adjacent to your city center is might be a very good idea, because then in the following ages you're going to benefit from those yields as well, and you'll already have that. Hopefully, you'll already have that city with those quarters already in place at the start of the age, so you're getting those yields presumably right from the start, unless there's a bug in the game where you don't get those yields on existing quarters. But there wasn't any talk about that. But who knows?
But so you have another strategy to make your capital super, super stupid good early on, and that's just going to snowball through the rest of the game. And then if you can pull that off and do that and swap capital or swap between multiple cities, and you have 3 cities like that. And so no matter how much the AI is spamming cities all over the place, you can still stay ahead of them, especially on higher difficulty.
Well, I mean, I don't think you'd get any benefit for the old cities that used to be the capital, because they would not have.
No.
Presumably, they would not have a palace in them. Still, it would be
right.
Downgraded.
But yeah, but you'd have all those. But you'd have all the districts next to each other with higher adjacencies anyway.
Yeah, they'd be giving adjacencies to each other, but you wouldn't benefit from every city having that palace adjacency. But yeah, I mean, you could use that to make more cities powerful. Like, there's not a production bonus, so it's not going to make the city super productive, but you can probably get some really high culture and science yields out of it.
Exactly.
And also, like, if the map, right, is not favorable towards like your antiquity capital being able to do that, right? Like if you're on the coast or something, or there's mountains, you got a mountain adjacent to your capital starting location where you just can't build a district there, then moving it in a later age then also becomes something to definitely think about doing.
Because if you have special bonuses for certain terrain depending on your civ or your leader, and you didn't spawn close enough to those to do that with your capital, well, then you could create a new capital next door ready to go for the next second age, third age, or whenever.
Yeah, and you get to pick where those cities are, so you can pick spots that will be optimal for maximizing all of these yield adjacencies. And I have noticed that that Civ 7, we've had a lot of complaints about the UI, but I always like to try to give praise, give credit where credit is due. I feel like the Civ 7 UI is very good at telling you what the yields will be when you place down a new district or a new building. Like when you go into the build menu and you pick a building or a district to place, like it shows what like all the yield changes will be on like every tile where that building or district is eligible. And if you hover over it, not only will it tell you what the yields are, but it tells you where those yields come from. So it'll say in the little tooltip or the widget on the side, like, you're getting, this tile is going to receive or give an adjacency bonus to another tile because of what building is in that tile. And it does a pretty, from what I've seen, pretty darn good job of doing that. Now, I don't know for sure that that there aren't bugs where some of that information might be wrong. Hopefully, it's not. But assuming it is all right, it's pretty good information. And I assume that's probably how people figured out that the palace does this, because I don't think it's like, for one thing, you don't ever build the palace, so you probably no one ever sees the tooltip that shows what the palace actually does. So even if that is documented in the tooltip, nobody ever sees it.
I don't know. Like, it's nice that it tells you that at some point, but on the other hand, like, this is powerful enough that I don't feel like it should have been hard to know about it.
For sure, yeah. And, one of, now back to bad UI design, one of the problems with Civ 7's city management is that, like, seeing the existing buildings in your city, like, you have to jump through a couple hoops to get there. Like, you have to press a couple buttons to get to the list of all the buildings that are in districts that are in your city, in order to be able to hover over them and see, like, the tooltips and stuff like that explain what they do. And that's probably where you would have to go to see what the palace does, either that or the Civilopedia. And I would not be surprised if there are a lot of Civ 7 players who don't even know that is something that you can see, because the UI isn't very clear at presenting it. You have to dig around a little bit to find it. But it is there, so if you're listening and you don't know how to see that information, the way you do it is you click on your city, and then in the top left corner, like where it shows all your yields, there's like a button that looks like a notepad. And if you click on that, it opens up another widget on the right side of the screen, and then that has different tabs to show you like your population, which shows you all your your food income and when the city's going to grow. And then there's another tab that shows like all of the buildings and districts. And then there's a third tab that I think is like a happiness breakdown or something like that. So that's where you would go to see that information if you've never seen it before and you're curious. But I feel like I should not have to explain something like that. I think it should be easier to find.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to cover?
I don't think so.
All right, then. Take us to the end. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on episode 445. It's been the main team, joined with Makalua.
Time for big snacks. That's called lunch.
And Mega Bears fan.
Lunch.
Patching in food.